Thank you, Pallavi, and a very good morning to all of you. A very warm welcome to the Bharat Inclusion Summit. We're very excited to see you here today. Before we launch with the summit's proceedings, I wanted to take some time to introduce you to CII and the work that we have done under the Bharat Inclusion Initiative, which has really made the summit possible today. So CII, built at IIM Ahmedabad, is one of India's oldest and most prominent entrepreneurship centers and technology investment platforms. We work across the entire innovation continuum, from incubating and accelerating early-stage ventures from around the country to providing them with seed and venture capital to fuel their growth. Underpinning all of our work is a very strong focus on insights generation that supports, enables not only our founders, but also helps push the boundaries of entrepreneurship discourse in the country. As one of the earliest entrants in India's startup ecosystem, there are several pioneering initiatives to our name. Whether it is conceptualizing and publishing Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, the genre-defining book on entrepreneurship, to launching the country's first accelerator programs across a variety of sectors, to running several focus interventions to catalyze regional ecosystems in the country through our operations in Ahmedabad, in Jaipur, in Gwalior, in Indore. We also set up the country's first climate-focused venture fund way back in 2012, and more recently set up the Bharat Fund platform, to support inclusive tech and deep tech ventures from India. Today, across our seed and venture activities, the CII family manages upwards of $100 million in investments, and our work spans consequential sectors such as financial services, healthcare, agriculture, climate, enterprise, space, to name a few. So after about a decade of catalyzing tough spaces at CII, in early 2018, we set up the Bharat Inclusion Initiative as a platform to do our bit to solve the hard problem of financial exclusion in India. Rather than taking piecemeal approaches, we looked at BII, as we call the initiative internally, as a full stack continuum, starting with research to really unearth very deep and actionable insights about the Bharat market. We set up incubation and acceleration programs to convert these insights into market-enabled entrepreneurial solutions. We set up startup grants and impact funds to support these ventures with early-stage capital. And we set up several sprints, hackathons, and grant challenges to inspire more entrepreneurs to build for Bharat. I will not go into all the details of the numbers. You just saw that on the screen. But all of this was made possible with the very generous support of like-minded partners in the form of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, JP Morgan, MetLife Foundation, Michael Susan Dell Foundation, and Omidyar Network. We are very fortunate to have with us today Pawan Bakshi from the Gates Foundation and Manisha from JP Morgan. Pawan and Manisha have been thought partners with us right from day zero when we were designing the program. They've asked us some very tough questions and also therefore given us many sleepless nights. And they've been both our sounding boards as well as a shoulder to cry on. Pawan, the entire Continuum approach was really only made possible because of the support from the foundation. I'd like to invite you to share your original thesis behind the Continuum and how you've seen it evolve over the years.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's really a pleasure being here, and I was talking to both Sandeep and Priyanka over the last couple of days, and it was yes, I will come, no, I will not come, and there are lots of reasons about why we said that, but I'm glad that I'm here, and I reached here about 8:40 in the morning, and I saw the humming of the place and the energy it brings, and I think after looking at that, I realized I'm overdressed. Right? I should have been in my t-shirts and jeans. But here I am, and I'd like to take you with me on a journey. And the journey started about 5 years ago, where we actually met the team. Actually started even prior to that, and my colleague Himanshu and I started to discuss things. And we spent about a year in designing the program. It took us almost a year. And every day we had new questions, new insights, why this, why not that, and started with a very simple thing. At the time we started off, the Jam Trinity had kicked in, India Stack was being spoken about like crazy, and we asked a question, will the India Stack actually serve the poor? Right? And in those days, it was the days of another Zomato or a Food Panda or something else, which would cater to the middle class and in the urban areas and stuff like that. So we said, hey, is there an opportunity here? Can you help us identify what does India Stack mean for the poor? How can it help the poor? And are there people like yourselves here in the room who can help us take the stack and its elements and serve those people who need it the most, right? And we debated and we discussed and we fought and we had lots of crazy times. I remember so many times. I haven't gone to Ahmedabad in as much times as I did in that year. But eventually we came out with what Priyanka calls as the Continuum, right? So we said, do we need research which will help us understand what the challenges are? And this is really important because of two things. One is, at the time we started off, most of the startup world entrepreneurs came from Bangalore or Delhi, which means that a lot of people who are trying to serve the population that we care about hadn't been there in those locations and lived those lives. How do you get them to do that? So that research was important because a technical capability was right here, right? Two was that research was also important for people to know what kind of lives other people have. Hence the People of Bharat series, we started to talk about the lives of those who we care about, including that of women, right? And then came the part of incubation, that if there were startups, if there were some startup ideas, how do you take it and build it into a product or a service that can finally be launched and people can take advantage of that? And then came the portion of acceleration. How do you accelerate this, that now that you've got the prototype in place, you have a business case in place, you know what you need to do, how do you accelerate it? And I think the last one is that even if you've gone and done everything else like that, where do you get financing to move it ahead? So we're looking at the entire end-to-end chain, and I must also tell you that this model is unique. I haven't seen this happening elsewhere, right? And so I will not go into details because we know that we have a hard stop, and I have another speaker here who's far more, I think, qualified to talk about stuff than I am on the lab. But I must tell you that what I see is success of the program. The fact that more than 750 people registered for this conference here today, and only 500 of them then got accepted, is a point in place that is a success, because we couldn't have got 750 people at the time we started, about 5 years ago, right? If we could get 50 people into the room, we'd be very happy then, right? Two is that we've got about 50 startups in the last couple of years over 6 cohorts who've gone and looked at about 35 different use cases across categories. They are serving today about 32 million customers. More than 2/3 of that is the lower income. And more than half of them are women. And the best part is that the entrepreneurs come from about 100 cities in the country. It's no longer the top 2 cities or 3 cities in the country. So it's got expanded beautifully, right? Much more than we could have imagined that at the time we started off, right? And to top of that, when we started, most of the funding went to the fintechs, which were urban focused, serving the upper middle class and stuff like that. And almost zero came to the sector we now speak about at the Bharat. Today, after about 5.5 years of being in operation here, this sector has got 10% of the total fintech funding coming into this. This is huge. Right? And I'm sure a lot of people in the room here are beneficiaries of that 10%. But the fact that from a 0 to 10% in 5 years is humongous, right? The other thing is that once we've started to do this thing, there are other collaborations which have started to appear with NPCI on the Grand Challenge for UPI on feature phones, with the RBI Innovation Hub on the project on Swanari, and this is only going to grow. This is not going to stop. So I think we've started a journey where we've seen some unprecedented kind of success and growth. And I think I'd like to applaud the team of Priyanka, Kunal, Sanjay, Sandeep. There are whole loads of other people, Supriya, whole loads of other people who I will never remember their names of, but they're all contributing, including all yourselves. So I want you to applaud for yourselves and for the team of CII to be able to do a super job. Thank you.
Yeah, I love how you put the pressure on me to save time. Well, first of all, Pawan walked up with a piece of paper. I walk up with an iPad. So just to let you know, viva la tech. Right, great. So Pawan has pretty much covered everything, so I'm not going to take a lot of time. I think one of the things which I would certainly like to underscore that all of us together in this room has been not just a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of travel to Ahmedabad and air miles accumulated, but also a lot of passion and grit. I mean, this was the first time anyone said 5 years ago, hey, we've got the rails in place in India. We've got a massive inclusive finance agenda that has been in play for 30 years. How are we actually taking this problem to scale, leveraging technology? Strangely enough, even though it seems so intuitive now, nobody thought of it just even 5 years ago. So when we started out having these rather interesting conversations, I would say, in the initial days, it was Pawan from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. There were colleagues who've now moved on from Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. There were again colleagues from Omidyar who moved on. And there was us sitting on one side of the table and Priyanka trying to bolster the strength of the team who was sitting on the other side of the table, because it was really a question of who can speak louder. Of course, we won. We had Pawan on our side. But anyway, that apart. So we did a research first. Similar questions as Pawan brought up. But we did a research to say that all of us know there is potential. But where is that potential? And what will it take to make that potential real? It was a 6-month research. It was in collaboration with our TA partner, who some of you or many of you may have met, MSC, who was earlier known as Microsave. And they mapped out the entire inclusive fintech landscape. And there was a huge yawning gap in terms of holistic support. And that's where CII stepped in to provide that entire continuum of support. So that's how the lab came to be in India. But actually, the roots of the Financial Inclusion Lab as part of the larger BII family were set maybe about 3 or 4 years before that. So JP Morgan, as most of you may know, is one of the largest financial institutions in the United States. And we set up something called the Financial Solutions Lab in the US, which was similar, but was designed to serve all Americans, which essentially means it was inclusive, but not focusing on a particular target segment back then. And when we started thinking, where else can we do such work? Why not India? Perfectly primed. So that's what brought the whole focus on India from a JP Morgan perspective to incubate, accelerate tech-based startups that served low-income, underserved, small and marginal farmers, MSMEs, just everyone who was struggling to access capital, which was both affordable, appropriate in the financial sector as it existed then. We're 50 startups through. I think between the Financial Solutions Lab and the Financial Inclusion Lab and the Catalyst Fund, collectively the startups serve about 75 million people at last count across a number of countries across the world. In India, it's 50 startups. What's our funds raised? Follow on, 80 million in India? So in India, that's the number. What next? 5 years, as Pawan said. I think we're now seeing, and we're talking about this quite extensively within the group as well as with CII and MSC, is how do we take it to the next level? How do we take the startups supported to scale? Because that's when we will know the mettle of this work. Take it to scale both from a startup perspective, but also bring the ecosystem, for lack of a better word, to almost embed this work in business as usual. So there is no need for philanthropic capital. It's all market forces at play. And if that happens, we have been successful in making financial services truly inclusive, building on the tech foundations that this country has. And that is the goal we are now striving towards. So through the day, you're going to hear about conversations around three main streams, so to speak, which we believe are literally the core of discussion when we talk about talking about scale and market forces in play. The first, of course, is customers. Pawan touched upon it briefly, that very often founders came from backgrounds with a very limited understanding of the customers that they really wanted to serve because they hadn't lived those lives. Most of us in this room are from educated, privileged backgrounds, and we're serving customers who have different financial behaviors and needs. So one of the first things we said, customer centricity is key. And as all of you who've been through the boot camps of the lab will know, that that's where things start when we talk about incubation/acceleration. So customer centricity, one of the themes you're going to see through this entire conversation. The second is enablers. And enablers are essentially, in other words, we can talk about ecosystem, what incumbents do or what providers like you do, what policy does, just what will it take to grow this entire initiative and make it market ready. The third I am reading, because I came in at 1 o'clock, so please forgive me. Priyanka, you want to help me out here? The future. How did I forget the future? Yeah, sorry about that. So the future. I don't need to tell this audience, technology changes very, very rapidly. How do you keep pace, both with the upcoming risks, compliance issues, control issues, cybersecurity, fraud? I can go on and on and on the things that we have encountered and will continue to encounter when it comes to tech being the platform on which solutions are developed. That's the third stream of the conversation that you're going to hear a lot more about today. I'm going to stop there because, as Pawan said, we're on a bit of a time crunch. But thank you so much once again for being here in the room with us today. It's so wonderful to see a full room, and though my apologies to the people who are standing, there are people standing in the room. So thank you so much. Really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. For those of you who've taken flights, I empathize, and I hope you have a wonderful day.